the air pollutant a lot of the times. And that was what was measured in the stack test we had them do. And with the heat of the water, that allows it to volatilize, and then that's coming out of the stack.
For all you all who did not pass chemistry, it's your next chance to learn VOCs. We have a question here that is an interesting question for Michael Grimshaw. Wants to talk about multiple and recurring felony violations. Why doesn't the FBI close down an illegal operation? I don't know if the FBI has any jurisdiction. I don't know if we've gotten to that point yet, but I'm going to let Michael Grimshaw ask his own question, and we'll just try to find out what the enforcement options are.
Hi. Well, it seems obvious to me. We want to stop the pollution. Everybody in this room, that's their only goal. We want to stop the pollution. And what I'm seeing is that the quickest way to do that is to close the door on the Mid-America plant. They are not operating in cooperation with the EPA, nor under their rules, nor under the transportation rules, nor under the container rules. They have ignored us. They've lied to us. We cannot trust them. Everything that they have printed and told us is almost true, but absolutely not accurate. So what my point is that this is a criminal organization. The laws that they're breaking are federal, which makes those violations felonies. If we had a felon living in our neighborhood, who would we call to stop that felon from poisoning our air and polluting our water?
Well, this is definitely not directed at me. So,
I will say for the EPA that we would not be able to either confirm nor deny the existence of a criminal investigation. We are actually civil investigators.
is it on?
Yep.
Thanks.
So again, and as we mentioned in our presentation, we're not able to discuss where we are in the negotiation process, but we are certainly working with the company to resolve these violations. But again, we would not be able to speak as far as any existence of a criminal investigation.
And if we did receive data that shows an imminent and substantial endangerment does exist, then at that point we could use our authorities, and one of those authorities possibly could be shutting down the plant. But at this point we don't have the data to show the imminent and substantial endangerment, but we would be able to do that if we had it.
I do apologize for speaking out of turn, but I remember reading the report about the EPA investigators walking around in the neighborhood for 7 days and experiencing symptoms of physical distress from the pollution of the air they were breathing. We live here. Those investigators don't live here. And my point is that you do have evidence, but you're not admitting that you have that evidence. You want it to be proven. You want to prove that there's actual harm before you're choosing to enforce the law. And that's what I can't agree with.
Well, I will mention again that we have alleged violations. We have sent out the notice of violations to the company, and we are in active negotiations with the company to resolve the violations. And yet we do certainly understand your concern, and we do are certainly aware that we are only out of the facility for short periods of time. So I do understand your concern.
All right. Tom Kipchinsky is here with us.
Very good.
Hey, well, I know those names.
Right, you did good. Couple things. I think, they're looking at what if, let's say we get remediation going on. You're going to need somebody in there from the federal government or from the state overseeing this. I mean, if they've had safety consultants working for them and they haven't done anything, who said they're going to put everything in and they're going to have everything working properly? It sounds like they don't have an engineering or environmental management system whatsoever. I'm kind of disappointed at OSHA here because the workers who are working there they're going through worse conditions, okay? The thing is that if you look back in history, when they were looking at the meat packing industry, they had to put federal meat inspectors in order to have compliance, and they still do. You're going to need that with this. So there might have to be legislation that you're going to put in that's going to require some of these facilities to have a federal inspector keeping an eye on them. Because I've worked for companies that have been diligent on keeping environmental standards. And I talked with Christine about this. I think I told you, I literally gave her just how they were working. And I didn't work there, but companies that I've worked for would never have dealt with this company. We did our due diligence. You've got that cradle to grave. And I think if people understood that are dealing with these companies, with this company as such, guess what? They're on the hook if there's going to be a cleanup or a remediation. They're going to start going down the list. This company goes under, they're going to go after these companies. Hey, this was your stuff that went through that facility. You helped pollute. So what I'm trying to say is that you're going to need somebody to oversee this company. You can't have trust with this company, and I agree with the Sudas. You've got to have an inspector, literally, and if you have to create special legislation to do that for other companies throughout the country, do it. Thank you.
That's a statement, right? All right.
State and federal.
Well
We
said.
appreciate it, thank you.
Bob Dick. Okay, Bob.
Hi, thanks for giving me the opportunity to talk. I have a cold, so I
So you want the
may
mic
not be able to.
to project? Okay. Oh, hope you don't have the flu.
Maybe I'll just try to talk.
Thank you,
I don't
Bob.
want to get anybody else sick. I've lived in St. Francis for 40 years. I live on Denton Avenue, which is 2 blocks south of the toxic spewing plant that has been doing that, not since 2015, like all these statistics show. It's been doing it for the 40 years that I've lived here. And I'm not here to give a speech, but I do have some questions for them. And unfortunately, some of the other meetings I haven't been able to get to because I was sick or doing other things, unable to come here. And this is a priority for me. It's really important to me. I can remember recalling when I first built my house in St. Francis. I came here in 1978 as a police officer. I was required to live in the city, and I took to that, and I loved it. And I love living here. Unfortunately, I built a home next to a toxic spewing plant, or very close to it. I can recall sitting with some of my neighbors 30 years ago, 20 years ago, and one of my neighbors pointing out to me, and I told John this, Bob, you know, the people over there, they died of cancer, and this one died of cancer, and that one died of cancer, and my son died of cancer at 9 years old, and my wife has cancer, and I have cancer. And he would say, you know, it was unbelievable. You know, there's got to be something wrong here, but yet you thought, well, somebody would have been doing something about this before this. Why haven't they? Well, it must be okay. As a police officer, I don't mean to put that back to you. As a police officer, I used to drive through the barrel plant, the original barrel plant, just to check it for kids and stuff, because kids once in a while would get back in there and they would knock the barrels over, or they'd be back there having parties and stuff. And I would drive through there, and the smells were unbelievable, really, really strong, very odoriferous, I'd have to put my windows up in the squad car when I would go through. I would see stuff leaching out of barrels, dripping down barrels when I was driving through, but I made my rounds and I would leave. One of my questions, I have 2 questions, but one of my questions was, with a background as a police officer, I would never think that it would be prudent for me to tell a person that I'm investigating, I'm coming on this date to check on you and investigate you, so you have a chance to clean up whatever you got or get rid of your evidence or whatever you got. Apparently that's what was done, and when they went there without notifying them, I guess they tried that, and they weren't even allowed on the property. They had to wait for the attorneys for the company to come. Now, that's not a company that sends a letter to us that says, all we care about is their community and our employees. That tells me that's somebody that has something to hide. What are they hiding? Why could they not let these people in right away? And while they're doing their investigation, then call their attorneys and say, come and meet with us. Why? No, you can't come on our property and tell our attorneys there. So my question is, do any of you have the authority to just walk in there and investigate them? And why has it ever been done, just walking in there without notifying them? And are some of these findings some of the things that you found?
Most of our inspections are unannounced. What happened, Julie can talk a little bit more about the one where they were.
Yeah, when we went to, this was fairly, almost immediately after the newspaper articles were published. So it's our expectation that the company was expecting us to show up. If I recall correctly, the late February and early March inspections that we did there were unannounced, but when the inspectors went there, that the operations appeared to be staged in the drums that they were actually processing. And that was part of the reason that we took fairly unusual step of requesting a warrant, an administrative warrant to gain immediate access to the facility in order to observe operations unstaged. But yes, as Sarah said, we typically conduct unannounced inspections.
Is that warrant an open warrant, so you can go anytime, or each time you have to go back and get a warrant again?
This warrant was only for a specified time frame. So if we have the authority to go on site, both recommend give us the authority to inspect facilities for compliance with the regulations. And I'm seeing, Jeff, do you want to add something?
There is a limit. While the statute gives us authority for access, any citizen has the right to refuse us entry, and that would require us to obtain a warrant, and that's a Fourth Amendment right. Companies have that, people have that. We can't just go in if someone refuses to give us access. We have to get a warrant.
Felony in progress.
Okay, so being a police officer, ex-police officer, if I feel that I want to get out of a place today and I gotta go, I gotta fill out a warrant, find a judge. Is a judge okay a warrant, or can it be one of you guys?
It's a federal judge that we have to obtain a warrant from.
So that doesn't take an hour, or it doesn't take 2 hours, or it doesn't take a day, or it doesn't even take a week maybe, so now we've lost time because of that. And how is that benefiting us, that process? I know it's the process, but isn't there a way to streamline that? Isn't there a way, because this company has had so many problems, isn't there a way to circumvent the lengthiness of having to get that? We had a warrant once, we found this stuff, then we want to go back again. We're going to go through the whole thing all over again from scratch, or can we just add on to that warrant and say, we found this before, we think it's there again, we think they're violating it, boom, let's go today.
Well, we did conduct an additional inspection in July with our sampling event, and our inspectors were able to go on site without any significant issues. So it's my belief after the warrant that the company has been more cooperative in granting us access to the site.
Can I just add though, that there was a 25-minute delay in July when you went in a coordinated, you went to all three, sorry, John Dieter from the Journal Sentinel, you went to all three facilities with a 25-minute delay, and that squares with what the whistleblower Will Kramer said was their time, that they had a coordinated drill as to when regulators showed up, and they had time to set things up the way they wanted to, and 25 minutes would be sufficient to do that, and he has that on tape. As to that, and that was with a court order. You were still stopped for 25 minutes before you came in. Is that not true?
It was around that time frame for each facility, as I
Yeah.
remember.
Hi, I'd like to jump in here. You know, we share your concerns with the way that the inspections took place and the delay, and we're taking that into consideration in dealing with this particular company. So again, we can't go into the details of what that entails, but we understand your concerns, and we have those same concerns, and we're taking that into consideration in dealing with the company.
Mr. Deck had another question too regarding, the death cluster, whether or not there's any investigation